So about a year or so ago, I got the cheapest driveway alarm I could find off of Amazon with the idea that it would probably fail very quickly, and then I could report back to you all saying not to get it. However, that is not what happened. This is the HTZSAFE driveway alarm that I got with one receiver and two sensors in October of 2023 for $40, and it still works perfectly fine. It has worked for more than a year in North Dakota weather conditions, which means extremely cold temperatures, high winds, and everything else you can think of when it comes to having this thing sit outside. And I'm actually really impressed with it, so I figured for a budget option for anybody who might need to secure their property or verify if someone's coming down their driveway or not, might want to consider based on the fact that it still works. It actually works. I don't know what else to say. I thought it would fail. It's from China. I assumed it was junk, and here we are today. So I'm Magic Prepper, and I do want to thank Midway USA for supporting the channel and being the biggest supporter of the channel for a long time now, which allows me to get out here and talk about products that have nothing to do with them at all. So a big thanks to them, but this thing is going to be found on Amazon, not through Midway USA. And of course, I'll have links to this down below in the description, as well as in the pinned comment, because like I said, it actually works. So what is this thing and what does it do? Well, first off, you get it with either a receiver and a sensor or multiple sensors, and you can add additional receivers later on if you need them. The sensors are solar powered and weatherproof, and it does seem that they are certainly weatherproof because it's been out here for a long time, and this is not the only one I have, but this is the one that I'm willing to share on camera that has been perfectly fine even in awful weather conditions, including negative 40-degree wind chills, as well as hail and everything else we get out here in North Dakota. Zero issues at all, and the solar power aspect has worked perfectly fine. I've never had this run out of batteries. So the receiver plugs into a wall outlet, and then it has a backup battery that can last up to 3 days. And what's nice about that is that even if your power goes out, your driveway alarm system will still work. And of course, you don't have to use it for a driveway because you can tell this one is not at my driveway. Now, you can expand this system to having 4 sensors total, but as many receivers as you want. And what that means is that those receivers can go in your garage, in your office, in your living room, or wherever you want them to be. So that way, no matter where you are in your house, you get a heads up if somebody's coming past one of your sensors. And these sensors can actually be set to different ringtones on your receiver, so that way you know which sensor is being activated based on the sound that it's making. So I find that to be beneficial, and it also correlates to a lighting system on the receiver that lights up to show you which sensor is going off, and in the sense that you want to maintain a level of stealth or you don't want anything loud to be happening during this defensive situation, you can actually mute it so you only see the light, and that way you get a heads up without telling everybody else that you did receive that heads up. This system right here has a half-mile wireless range from sensor to receiver, and it seems to check out pretty well, at least in my experience, considering I have the receiver in my house and then I have one at the end of my driveway, which is getting close to about 400 yards away. So it seems to work just as advertised. I haven't tested it further than that, but I will say that that's pretty far for it to work just fine without any issues. Now, the sensor can detect quite a distance as well, between 25, 50, and 70 feet, based on whatever setting you set it to. So that way, if you have a really wide driveway or a really wide walkway or something like that that you want to monitor, you can say how far you need the sensor to go. And of course, if you want to pull it back a little bit in case maybe it intersects something that's going to have a lot of traffic and you don't want to be alerted to every little thing that occurs, that allows you to change that and make sure that you're getting the information you need. So this thing is cheap, and it is exactly what you expect. Straight from China, right? And probably full of who knows what type of Trojan horses. But for how much it costs and for what it does, it's been working just fine. But there are some pros and some cons I want to go over about this system with you, just so you're aware of it, okay? So first off, what are the pros? Well, obviously it's weatherproof and it has a very good operating range based on temperature. It can operate between negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So in most places, especially here in the United States, it's going to work just fine. And even here in North Dakota, it gets colder than negative 30 sometimes, and it still works. So that range might even actually be extended a little bit further, but of course, they're only going to tell you what they can guarantee. Now, another pro is that the little sensors have never ran out of battery. Now, you can actually plug them in and charge them, and that's something you have to do when you first buy it, because you want to make sure that they're fully charged and ready to go. So when you get everything set up, you don't have to worry about, whether or not the sun is providing the power you need. But I did that the first time just for the installation and the setup, and then they've never needed to be charged ever again. And I live somewhere where it's, kind of gross quite a bit of the year. So honestly, I'm pretty impressed by that. But even if the solar fails, or maybe you just get really bad sunlight for an extended period of time, you can take this system off and go charge it in your house or whatever you got to do. So you have that ability, but I've never needed to do that. So I would say that's a pro, because, that's pretty impressive. Now, another pro is that they're really easy to install. You basically just install a little platform here for this little, we'll just call it a nugget, to go inside of. That way you can turn this thing however you need to. And of course, you turn it on. There's a switch on the back, you press a button, you do the same thing with whatever other sensors you're gonna set up, and then you plug the wall receiver into an outlet, and you're done, okay? Now, of course, you're gonna have to go through and decide what tones and everything else you wanna use related to each sensor and stuff like that, and the volume level and everything else, but in reality, it's very plug and play. You set it up, you turn it on, and you're done. So I find that to be pretty easy. You screw a couple of screws in with the mounting plate here, and then you stick the little nugget, is what I called it, what we're gonna call it from now on, into the mounting plate, and that's it. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Now, another pro is that this thing is good for vehicles and for animals as well as people. It actually does detect heat, and then it can detect animals as small as pheasants, which I've had it detect right here at this particular sensor. And that's fine, but sometimes annoying depending on how many pheasants are coming through. But it's nice because you can use it for whatever you find to be necessary for preparedness. So I can tell if somebody's walking through my yard, I can tell if a vehicle's coming through the driveway, or I can tell if that usual group of deer are coming in through this area you're seeing me at right now. And maybe in a SHTF type scenario, I think, hey, dinner bell's ringing, and then I can go to my bathroom window and take a deer out without even having to leave my house. Just throwing it out there, but that might be a use case you could probably consider if it's something that is applicable to your area. So I like how it works for more than just vehicles. It definitely detects people, it detects deer, it detects animals. Like I said, from pheasants to deer to humans, whatever size you're gonna have to concern yourself with, it'll pick it up. Now, what are the cons of this system? So one of the cons is that if this thing is pointed at brush or trees or bushes or just like really tall grass or anything like that, and the wind starts picking up and those things start moving a lot, it will start to go off. So you'll get some false alarms every so often in that condition, right? And that's unfortunate and it can be annoying, but if you just make sure to clear out the area around it to make sure there's no brush or trees like right in its line of sight, and then you also just strategically place it, right? So you put it in places where it's not going to be pointed at things that are going to move a lot, then you're going to be just fine. But it is something to be aware of, because in some people's yards or around their property, it might be hard to find a spot where that won't be a problem. So that is something to consider. Another con is that this thing is so Chinese that it doesn't even know where it is, right? Like, it's out of control, straight from China. I don't even know how to explain it, but basically there's no real instructions. Like, you get a little book, but it's like broken English that doesn't make any sense at all. And it's like I'm hanging out in rush hour and I don't even know what anybody's saying. But what I can say is that it's so easy to set up, it doesn't really matter. But the instructions are a little difficult and maybe not the best. And you will do some troubleshooting on your own to figure out how everything plays together. But once you figure it out, it's pretty simple and it doesn't really matter. But I'm just letting you know that if you do order this, like, don't expect some detailed instructions to come along with it, all right? Now, another thing is that there's no real alert if the sensors go down or if they lose power. Now, it hasn't happened to me, and they've never lost power, and I haven't had any issues with that. And so for being in North Dakota, where it gets very cold and it's a lot of snow and a lot of winter all year long, I would say that it's probably not the biggest deal, because I would expect this thing to have lost power at some point now, especially in these really cold temperatures, but in reality, it's been fine. So it's an issue, and it is something to consider, and it is something you might want to test every so often to make sure that everything's still running properly. But there is no alert saying like, hey, sensor number 2 is offline or anything like that. Like, you're not going to get a heads up if these things run out of batteries. You just have to do your due diligence and check all your systems out, but you should be doing that anyway, right? So just something to consider. It is a problem. And then the last con is something that we just talked about, is China. Okay, so China's the last con, because this thing is so Chinese that I wouldn't be even surprised if it was full of some sort of Trojan horse, or if it was going to explode every time they, press the explosion button on the remote control they have on the planet, or whatever it is, right? So yes, this thing might not work properly if we were invaded by China suddenly and they decided to shut off all the electronics they ever made off here in the United States, right? But I don't think that's like a huge concern, and I'm not really super worried about that. But like for some people, I know that's an issue. So like, yes, that is a con, but like, I don't care. So this thing works. It's actually working. It has worked for more than a year in extreme weather environments. North Dakota is not nice to things you leave outside. So that's just something to give it a little bit of a testament to durability. And the thing is that for $40, which I don't know how expensive they are right now, and they do go on sale every so often, so make sure you take a look. But at the time, it was the cheapest system I could get with 2 sensors and 1 receiver, and it still works today. So I figured I'd share that with you all, give you a heads up, give you a budget-friendly option in order to secure your property a little bit better if need be. And of course, if you have any questions about it, leave it in the comments below, because I'd be happy to give you any of my I don't know, anecdotal evidence about this system being, well, decent for the price. And anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.